We're leaving this mountain village and we're riding back to the railway station. So that means we've got to go up the hill and then down the hill.
And we're off on a multi-day, cycle-friendly train trip across the country, stopping in Sofia and onwards to Varna before heading south to the border where we'll ride our bikes across into Greece.
PJ got us to the railway station just before the train left. You know, we were, oh, gotta go, quick. So we've got 3 hours to wait for the train.
We've come to a vegetarian place called Dream House, and it was almost impossible to find. We had to go through this like seemingly closed, abandoned like shopping centre mall thing, and then up this side door and in through these like little stairs, and we're here. I get the impression that the railway staff really hate people with bicycles. Not welcome. That is the locomotive that brought us here. What is that?
The name of the last trick of this show is the helicopter. Now people, the helicopter took me 4 years of my life to learn.
We're walking down one of the many pedestrian-only streets in Varna. And let me tell you, Varna has been an absolute revelation. It's a beautiful city, and the jewel in Varna is the massive sea garden, which is this huge park that runs along the front, which has multiple attractions. You know, everything from aquariums, Navy museums, free thermal baths. They're open 24 hours a day. We went there in the middle of the night last night, and there was all the young people hanging out in the pool. And you're right next to the ocean, and it's like 40 degrees. It's almost too hot to be in. And it's just a lovely place to walk and look at the old buildings and see all the young people. And everybody here, it's like a Melbourne sort of theme, although they're not all wearing black, but they're all very fancy. So I really like it. It's a very great place, and we've overstayed. So we only came for a couple of days and we've stayed like 4.
There are a lot of pedestrian-only streets where you can promenade here, and they're vast. There are some cycle paths in this city, which is pretty cool. Lots of them. There's Charlie, and we're on our way to the Navy Museum.
We're at the Navy Museum. Even before you get into the Navy Museum, they have a few boats outside, and one of them's an old well, both of them are torpedo boats, the ones I'm about to show you, but one was made in the 50s and continued being made by the USSR up until the collapse of the USSR, and the other one was built back in 1906 and is super cool, and hopefully we'll be able to go on it later. But it's the last of its kind in the world. So isn't that like the ultimate sort of like cool looking boat? Even the anchors are like super cool. So it's like one of the first original torpedo boats, and it's awesome. It's seen action before World War One, during World War One, and all the way through to World War Two. So it saw a lot of action, and it's got this impression of speed, but it has a triple expansion steam engine and a top speed of 27 knots. So not the fastest thing in the world. And I like how it's got 2 torpedoes here and then another one sticking out the bow. So it's like really cool. And like I said, hopefully I'll be able to go on board and I'll be able to show you. But it's very long, and it's probably only like 3 meters wide at its widest point. And look at the rudder. It's just hung off the back on a tiller steering. How basic can you get? And see the chains just go up to the steering wheel, so you're sitting at the back steering, and it's just chain drive to the tiller and the rudder. And look at the size of that propeller. Like, you know, that is impressive for such a long narrow boat. You can tell it must have been it's sort of round bilged, so you think it must roll a lot in any sort of sea. Unless you're going straight bow in, you wouldn't want to be a beam in any sort of like big swell. You just roll over. That's the torpedo tube at the front, so you would just point it and shoot. And look how sharp the bow is. I mean, it looks like a racing yacht. It's so sharp. Now if you turn around, there's the Kraken. There's this Soviet torpedo boat that started being made in the 50s and was made right through to the fall of the Soviet Union. So these were not built in Bulgaria, they were built in the USSR. The rudders are still pretty small, and now we've got 2 engines, and I suppose they're diesels rather than triple expansion steam engines. So somewhere inside of that boat there's a boiler room. Hopefully, like I said, we can get on board and have a look. Here's the start, and it's right next to the start of the Sea Garden Park, and you can see there's twin mines at the front gate. So we're going in, and this is opened Tuesday to Saturday from 10 till 6, with the last entrance being half an hour before it closes. And it's run by volunteers. And it's called the Naval Museum, not the Maritime Museum.
entry cost 8 lev per person and 6 lev to be able to look through the boat that Charlie will show you shortly.
You have the shore searchlights, which are pretty big, and PJ really likes the motorbike with the sidecar. And I was just saying they kind of make this still today, you know. This is made in the Soviet Union, but the motorbike's kind of a copy of the World War II German BMW. The Russians always built big helicopters, so this is M1, M4 helicopter from the Russians. And I was saying it kind of looks like a Wessex, which is like the first helicopter I went on, but bigger. And also you can see where you open up and they can have troops coming out the back. So that's pretty cool. And right next to it, there's all old gunnery mounts. When I was at Nirimba, over on the far side, there was a graveyard of old gunnery mounts that we used to, and gunnery plotting tables and everything like that we used to climb over when I was an apprentice back in the 80s. And it kind of reminds me of them. There was guns there that were, you know, 8-9 inches, and there was down to, you know, 1-inch guns just sort of lying around in a paddock. You have the torpedo tubes. There's quite a few sets of torpedo tubes here. Section of sea mines here, like you would never know, but these are actually from 1877 to the end of World War I. So all these mines are, yeah, 100 years old plus.
So one of these periscopes is from the first Bulgarian submarine from 1916 to 1919. And the second one is a periscope, a German periscope from a UB-45 submarine during the same period.
So this is a periscope from a slightly more modern submarine. So they don't have any submarines anymore, the Bulgarians. They're talking about getting a couple, but they got some Romeo type submarines and they kept them going till 2011. So they're from the 50s and they're like modified. They're built off the German submarines of World War II. So they kept them going till 2011. And there's one here that you can go on. Unfortunately, it's not opened at the moment. They have a collection of armaments here. Basically, there's a sea mortar down there from like 1775, and you know, there's some 12-pounder cannons, and there's one here that looks like it's had a bad day. It's like the 6-pounder that's ruptured. And then you have this shore-based artillery all the way up to the 10-inch like World War I siege gun over there, and here that you can have a look at. So it's very old-fashioned. I mean, this is a bit more modern, but definitely those first ones are from World War I, and they're very interesting to see. And then you have rocket-based missiles here. So they have the shore-based artillery over there, and over here there's a couple of ship-based artillery pieces, but then they have one example of rocket-based from the Soviet Union, one of the first ones. But the funny thing is, you know, weapons like this that are in museums have been used in Ukraine to strike into Russia as we speak. So we look at these and we think they're all very antique and all that, but I suppose if you really want to, you could recommission them and off they go, you know, because they've definitely used stuff from museums and old-fashioned stuff from the 50s in Ukraine. In fact, they've been using stuff from World War I in Ukraine.
The cat puts this to good use too.
So these two guns, they're from different boats. The first one's from a destroyer, a Russian destroyer that was sunk during World War I. And the next one over is from a German submarine that was sunk during World War I as well. And the interesting thing is they were both recovered in 2010. So they've been underwater for almost 100 years. And they're still pretty good nick, you know, like when you look at it and you think that's been underwater for, you know, 100 years. You look at the gear, you know, there's hardly any rust. And the brass is still there and all that. You can imagine doing all the polishing. This would have all been like gold when they were underwater. And the submarine gun, you can see how tiny it is. Like,
aww,
look at it. Look at the submarine deck gun. It's like a 1-inch. It's a 37mm, so like an anti-tank gun size cannon. But that would have been underwater till 2010, and it was sunk in in World War I. It doesn't really give a date. It's from the UB1. So we're really getting back down there on the serial numbers, number 1.
There was another famous submarine sinking here, wasn't there?
Yeah, so Australia lost a submarine in the Dardanelles, which is, you know, attached to this in World War I as well. So, and they just found that submarine just recently. So, you know, in the last few years. So we just walked into the building, and the first thing you see is this big, you know, anchor in the floor. I reckon it's really cool. They have this beautiful model of the torpedo boat outside, and so you can see the torpedo at the front, and then it's cut away down here. So if you go down, this looks like the living quarters, and then you have a boiler here and a boiler here, and then you've got your engine room where you can see it's got a triple expansion engine. So, you know, that means there's 3 cylinders, the first one being high pressure, the second one being medium pressure, and the third one being low pressure. So you're using the work that you can get out of the steam, and then it probably just goes into a condenser so they can get the water back, so they can put it back into the boiler. So it's quite a efficient system, other than you need to put the heat energy in. So I'm on board the torpedo boat, and you can see the gun here. It's pretty cool, and you can see how wide it is. It's not wide at all. And then we're going into the bridge, so, you know, it's very cool, the bridge. There's the binnacle down there, and then you've got the steering position. There's another steering position out the back, and you can see it's chain drive down there. So, you know, very, very basic. You know, it's kind of cool. And you have these little tiny armoured windows to look through. So I take it you can turn these down so, you know, you can't see it all. And everything, and then that's out there. You'd feel pretty exposed out here, and you can see the switchboard up here. Not a lot. And I'm going to go down. So I've just come down from the bridge, which is just there, very technical. And you can see the chains coming down from the steering, and then you can see where the torpedo used to hang. So there's the torpedo hangers, and there's the torpedo door. And you can tell this is the crew's bunk room. So there's hammocks that would have been strung across. And down here, there's a very good sort of presentation, but it's all in Bulgarian, so you can't really tell. And remember, this is well over 100 years old now, and it seems like a really good nick. It looks like you could put it back in the water. And the funny thing about that is this is actually 2 boats. So the boat that this is called was actually scrapped. And they decided, as they were scrapping it, they decided to keep it as a museum ship, but it was too far gone. So they took one of the sister ships, took bits off the ship that they wanted to turn into a museum ship, and just renamed it. So it's sort of a half and half. But it's really cool just looking at how the torpedo just used to hang in the air, and then they just load it in and fire it. Very, very basic. And you can see the anchor well as well. So you can see the anchor chain coming down from upstairs. Here's another view of the bridge from downstairs, and you can see the ladder that you just have to climb down to get into here. And then you can see the torpedo hangers and the torpedo tube over there. And you have all these little tiny windows, which I kind of think is really cool. Because while there is electric lighting in here, and it would have had electric lighting, you know, the more, it feels quite claustrophobic, so the more natural light you can get in, the better. And every single one of them has these little armoured ports that you can pull down, probably when you're going into action. It's a pity, but it doesn't look like they're going to let you go down the boiler room. But look at the massive air intake for the boiler room. I would love to have gone down and had a look. And then just behind it, this would be the engine room. With, you know, it's all dogged down, the hatches, but there's a triple expansion engine down there. And I can tell you this is the high pressure, medium pressure and low pressure cylinder. So they'd have these ports here so you could remove the cylinder and work on the engine. And then you have the torpedo tubes here. These are on a rotating base. and obviously one facing one way and one facing the other. So this could have 3 torpedoes, and it doesn't look like it could have any in reserve. So once you shot off your 3 torpedoes, you have to run for it. And then out the back here, you have a secondary steering position, I suppose, if you got shot away. But if the last one was pretty exposed, this one's very exposed. And then I suppose if the chain breaks, you can come back here and steer it by hand if you're really keen. If you're really keen and really strong. I'm not really sure what this is, but I take it it's some sort of you know, lookout position so you don't fall overboard. But very basic. And now I'm going to go down here, so I don't know what's down here, but I'm about to go and find out. This must be the captain's cabin. So we saw the crew's cabin, which looked very basic. You had the chain locker for the anchor in there. They had hammocks. And now the captain's got a beautiful bedroom. Like, so this is, and then he's got his own little office down here with all the cupboards and everything. And I take it in there, there'll be a bathroom. Oh no, there's another cabin. So this must be the officers' quarters. So this must be the wardroom, you know, and I take it there'd be a bathroom in here as well where they can wash up. That'd be the chart room. So very nice, very beautiful wooden paneling, you know, skylights, and again, quite a lot of portholes. So very nice. And on the other side of that, it would be the engine room. And on the other side of that would be the 2 boiler rooms. Very tight. And you know what, I've been impressed as well, this boat has so many vents and hatches that can be opened to give ventilation. But you must admit, when you're at sea, you would be opening none of these because the freeboard would be very low. The waves would just wash over the deck. So anyway, it's really nice, and it really shows you, it's quite roomy. It's, I mean, I don't know how big the crew was. I take it there must be quite a lot to keep 2 boilers going, but it's more roomy than you would think. As you can see, the captain's cabin ends here, and so there's another compartment behind here, and there's 2 hatches to get into it, there and there. You can't get in, but it shows you there's even more space as well. Oh, it looks like we can lift it up down here. Oh no, it's locked closed. What a pity. I'd really like to spend a day going through all this. And then there's another mount here for another gun, which I haven't got out. And that was the skylight that was in the officers' cabins there. So you could have that open because any waves would be washing along there. And these must be the hatches to get into the engine room here. There's an air intake there with a water catcher. Like I said, all the hatches here, and then this one here. And look, here's the kitchen. Look at the kitchen. Like, how amazing is that? You've got a wood-fired stove sitting out in the open. The galley. This gun here is just also outside the Naval Museum, and it's a coastal-based gun. It's like 10 inches. It's very large. You know, when I was in the Navy, I went out and I was lucky enough to see New Jersey firing off its broadsides off Sydney. And you know, I think they're 16-inch guns. And you look at the size of these are massive, and you think 16-inch guns must have been huge. But then you think Yamamoto had, you know, 18-inch guns. So, like, must have just been so amazing to watch them fire. But that is a very big gun. That's a stern view of the torpedo boat, and you can see the kitchen having pride of place out there in the elements. You wouldn't want to be a cook on this, and you must admit, this, even though this sea is pretty calm, it would still rock a lot, I reckon. It would be not much fun. And the propeller and the rudder just seem so oversized for the size of the boat. I mean, look at that there. That's probably about 4.5 feet, the stern post, and you know, with the pintles put on for the rudder pintles. And look at the stern guards. Look how flimsy they look. Yes, they're there, but they're not awfully big, are they? And look at that propeller. I mean, that propeller is huge. That's got to be 2.5 meters across. if you come, you know, like this is like history. If you're into naval history, this is like awesome. It's in such good condition. It looks like they could just slip it back into the water and we could fire it up and take it for a cruise. And it's so basic. Anything that was broken we could just fix and we could just be on our way. Living history. It's directly in front of the Naval Museum, and which is right in the middle of town. This is beautiful. Like, look at it. It's like, just remember up there you've also got the hot springs, the free hot springs where you can just go into the water, but the beautiful sandy beach and everything. And if you walk 100 meters that way, you're right in the middle of town.
This is beautiful, and it's autumn. Can you believe it? This is just fabulous weather and lovely scenery.
When we're up the coast in the Sea Garden, you look down the coast and you see this what looks like an old warship laid up in ordinary, you know, so an old sailing boat. But when you come down, you find out it's a restaurant, and it's, you know, a building as well, just shaped like an old ship. Still interesting. People tell me it's very good food there, but I'm disappointed it's not an old warship laid up in ordinary. So we're at the end of the beach in the park, and then there's the dock here, you know, they call it the dock. And obviously this has all been turned over now to restaurants and everything, but there's a working port right next door, and you can see the ships there, and then you can see the naval base over there with quite a lot of little navy ships. They look quite old, and they will be. So anyway, it's really lovely here. Like, it's, I can't believe that this is not more famous and more on the tourist, you know, tourist. And look at the length of these fishing poles. Like, they've got to be like 30 feet long, and they don't have reels. They just drop it in the water, and they only have like 3 or 4 meters of line on the end.
Sadly, we left Varna and started our journey towards the border with Greece. This is a brand new railway station. They haven't even finished commissioning the lifts and the escalators yet. Very swanky. Unfortunately, because they haven't been commissioned yet, Charlie has to carry the bikes up manually, but this will be fantastic when it's finished. He's always into things. I don't know if he's supposed to go up in there, Charlie.
There's the railway station over there, and I'm now inside that big steam locomotive, but the front of it has been kind of stripped off, but you can still sort of see some of the stuff. There's the little seat, the brake, everything. There's the firebox in there, you know. There's the coal bunker behind us, and like there's a float. Looks like what would be a float gauge there. So, you know, it's pretty cool. It's a pity it's in such bad condition. You know, you can just see it's going to rust away. But, you know, a good set of... there's enough here to do a restoration. Because it's only the light tin that's sort of rusting away. All the thick steel is still in very good condition. And the roof is even still... The wooden roof is just beginning to give out. There's a couple of gauges still up there with their dials missing, but very, you know, the romance of steam. This is certainly a very big train.
Very few foreign tourists visit Stara Zagora, and it's really authentic, so check it out if you're in the area.
This is a Roman road and the Roman Forum, which they just discovered by accident. They were building another building, and during the excavations they found this, and it goes for maybe 500 meters, and it's the actual Roman road, and the actual Roman ruins. I feel bad for the people that were building the building, because, you know, you would have gone through all that work to get the approvals. You would have done everything. You dig in the foundations and you hit the Roman ruins. I'm sure it happens a lot in Europe. But it's all opened here. It's right next to us, the museum, and over the other side is the library. So if you're going to strike a Roman road, this is the place to strike it, between the library and the museum.
I just looked at the events calendar, and tonight there was something marked, so I did Google Translate, and tonight there's opera for babies. This is weird.
It's pitched at the right level for us.
Yeah.
So this must be their equivalent of the registry office. And you've got the lights, and you've got this, and you've got this pure 1970s. And it looks very sort of, you know, cold, but there's a piano and everything. It's so much nicer than when PJ and I got married. We got married during the pandemic. We had like 9 people, and we got married in a hotel room, basically, with no ornamentation and just music coming out of a mobile phone.
So romantic.
It was so romantic.
When we were booking our train tickets, the lady at the train station was adamant that we should go to another city instead. But this is great. Like, there's such a huge pedestrianised area. There's lots of cafes, there's lots of museums, and there's like street markets. I think this is lovely. I don't know why you wouldn't come.
Today we're off to Dimitrios, which is some little nondescript town where happens to be a railway station that PJ really wants to get to. There was a bit of, argy-bargy this morning, because there's another town that's just a little bit further on, just a tiny bit further on, that looks a lot more interesting and has a lot more accommodation options. But PJ's like, no, I'm not doing it.
Not up for 100 k's today.
It wasn't 100 k's, it was like 90. So we were going to do 70, and it was just another 20 kilometers, hardly anything. And she's like, no, I'm not doing it. And she then put on her pouty face and like, I'm not doing it. You know, so anyway, I, like the weak man that I am, capitulated, and just like we're paying extra for the privilege of stopping earlier. So anyway, this town was, the middle of it's nice, but the outside of it is, obviously went through a lot of expansion during the Soviet and some of the places are a bit not travelling very well, you know, the old apartment blocks and things like that. And it's definitely an area that's set up for car travel, which is probably, in the middle, it's completely walkable, you know, and it's a lot of pedestrianised streets and stuff like that. And then as soon as you get out, it becomes like pedestrians are second-class citizens and bike riders are not thought of as at all. So, but it's pretty good. I like it. It's nice. The accommodation here was nice, and it was 28 euros for this room, which is quite good. I mean, definitely not as good as Varna. I'm really missing Varna. No. It was a really lovely place. I want to go back there and stay there for a couple of months. There was lots to explore. I never went on the submarine. There was a Romeo class submarine, but it wasn't open while we were there. And, you know, I miss the streets. I miss all the young people. I miss the water. I miss the parks. Yes, Varna, definitely go there. It's great.
I second the coolness of Varna. They had like lots of events as well, like Lindy Hop classes and all sorts of random activities and things going on. Even, you know, this is autumn, winter season starting now. There was lots happening, and it was really cool. And we only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to see in that area. Getting some supplies, and you can see the housing stock in some places. You can take a train to Dimitrovgrad, but we decided to ride and explore the landscape. So we're in a bus shelter, and Charlie, what's this? What do we see here?
Well, in Europe, or at least this part of Europe, it seems like they put death notices up almost everywhere. And so when you're going along, there's always these pictures of the person with their days, you know, the days that they were alive. So, you know, their birth date and their death date. And they also stick them on the doors of the deceased as well. And they seem to stay out for a long time. And in some places there's just lots and lots of them. It's quite morbid.
There's Charlie.
So the riding here is like the north of Italy, you know, it's long, it could be Provence. You know, it's beautiful, but you know, you have to pick the road. So this road's a bit broken up, but when you're on the good sealed road, it's beautiful. It's like large fields, rolling hills, easy gradients. It's really great riding. And peaceful. Not a lot of cars when you get off the main road.
And we're off again as I contemplate what sort of hallucinogen my husband could have possibly ingested to consider this the same as cycling in Provence. And we get to enjoy some fabulous views over very rough roads. That down there is a cow, and I believe that is the railway station.
Euros.
Thanks for joining us. Next time we'll cross the border and head into Greece, meeting some cool cycle tourists along the way.